We're in November right now, and these plants keep producing new leaves. It's like it doesn't know that it's winter and it's time to hibernate. It's so interesting because even my Monstera deliciosa, which didn't produce any leaves this summer, produced a new baby in the past 2 weeks, and it's just gorgeous. Excuse the mess that I have over here. This is for another plant project, but just take a look at this Philodendron Florida Ghost that's on this Coco Coir Mosspole. I bought this Mosspole pre-made on Amazon, and it's actually extendable. But what I'm noticing is that this Coco Coir material is not fit for my New York City apartment. It just dries out too quickly, and it doesn't stay moist enough for the plant to actually grow and attach onto. This Coco Coir Mosspole is not working for the plant, so I definitely have to make it a new Mosspole. And since we're talking about Mosspoles, let's look at the different ones that I have around the house and see which ones actually work for the plants. Here's another plant that's on a Mosspole. This one is a Mosspole that I made myself using sphagnum moss. I actually have a tutorial on how I made it. The plant that is on this right now is the Ataba bowensi, Philodendron Ataba bowensi. This is a plant that I imported. I do see a couple things with this plant is that it's not really attaching onto the moss again. The moss is drying out too quickly, and these aerial roots are, funny enough, growing towards the opposite direction of the Mosspole, which is not really helping the plant. A plant that's actually doing pretty well on a Mosspole is my Philodendron Red Queen on top over here. This is using another different type of Mosspole. I like to experiment with different types just to see which ones work for my apartment. This is a 3D printed Mosspole from Plant Corner. This one seems to be doing the best in my apartment. So what it does is it provides a structure that holds in all the moss inside, so it's able to retain a lot of that moisture. I haven't gone to water this part of the house yet, but this tends to stay wet for like 2 to 3 days. And if you see over here, the arrow roots are actually rooting into the moss, which is perfect. That's what we want. So I'm pretty sure this new leaf that's coming out right here will be bigger than the last one. What happened was that I cut this Philodendron Red Queen for a plant swap, and since then it's spent a lot of energy to produce this kind of secondary branch, which caused the leaves to be smaller. But right now that it's producing its own aerial roots on this branch, I'm pretty positive that the new leaves will get even bigger, so that's really exciting. Because of the way it's made and also the plastic material, this is more expensive than a regular Mosspole that you would get on Amazon. So I did a little bit of research on YouTube, and I found different tutorials to make a similar Mosspole using less expensive material. And I actually made a few as experiment. I want to show you. So this one I made last week. This is my Philodendron Florida Beauty. This is another plant that keeps growing throughout the different seasons. I noticed that this plant started to tilt forward, and also the leaves became tinier and tinier, which is not what I wanted. It was time to give it a support, so I made it a Mosspole using very cheap material. This is some plastic mesh that I got from Amazon, and then using the moss that I already had. I did this last week, and I'm seeing some good progress. This has some aerial roots that are already rooted into the moss, and I'm just feeling the moss on the bottom. It's actually still moist, so it seems to be working in my apartment. Because I'm already seeing so much good results after a week of making this Mosspole for my Philodendron Beauty, I'm gonna make this exact one for the other 2 plants that aren't doing as well. I'll put that one back, and then we'll take this child into the other room, and we're gonna make Mosspoles together. Oh, I forgot to show you, on this table we also have this Mosspole that I made using the same method for my philodendron lemon lime, and seems to be loving it. It's a lot bigger than the other moss poles that I made, and it's also attaching onto the bottom of the pole right here. And I just love how this method I can make different shapes. This one's kind of more like a board than a pole, and I put extra bamboo here for support. So you can make different alternatives of this moss pole. Here I have some other ones as well. These are the two plants that we're working with today, the philodendron Florida Ghost and also the philodendron Atababoense. We're going to be making it new moss poles. Let me just grab some material and we can get started. We're going to warm up and start by making a small moss pole for this plant. I have everything we need for this project already. So here I have the plastic mesh we're going to be using to hold in the medium. This one is a white plastic mesh that I got from Amazon. There's a lot of black one, but it's really hard to find a white one. And this one almost looks like it glows in the dark, but I don't think it actually does. It would be pretty cool if I have a glow-in-the-dark moss pole. It has this diagonal pattern on it. I've seen ones with a square grid pattern. It doesn't really affect how you make the moss pole, it's just all aesthetics. We're also going to be using zip ties. Here I have very small white ones that we'll be using to tie the mesh together. And for the growing medium, we're going to be using sphagnum moss. So I've seen people use different medium to make moss poles. I've seen people use like leca, orchid bark, but for this video, since I have a lot of moss, we're gonna be using moss. This is already pre-wet already, so it's holding some moisture. The last thing we need is this gardening tape. This will be used for attaching the plant onto the moss pole. So this step is really critical. If you don't tie it correctly, it will not attach onto the moss pole properly. So we'll go into that detail later. So that's everything we need to make the moss pole. We'll just get started. Put the plant aside and cut the mesh. I usually just eyeball it. A 2-inch diameter pole. So we're just gonna make one cut and go straight down. The next thing you wanna do is start putting moss inside here. Line it up so that we can close it. When you're doing this, you don't wanna pack it too tightly or else it'll be difficult for the roots to root inside the moss. This is a good amount of moss to put in here. I also left a little bit of space here. This is gonna be put into the bottom of the pot and be filled up with soil so that it provides like a good structure. Taking some zip ties, I'm gonna start tying one end, both ends together. So you wanna tighten it just enough to enclose the space, and we can tighten it up more later. Here we're just using it as like a placeholder. And then we're gonna do the same on this end. Pretty easy. Now we're gonna enclose the whole thing. You can just do it for like every other one or every 3 to 4 holes, which is what I'm gonna do for this moss pole. And that was it. Pretty easy. Just gonna cut off these zip tie ends now. And that was it. Because this is a small moss pole, we don't need to give it like put a bamboo in it to give it more support. It's kind of really sturdy already. This moss pole is done, so we're gonna be bringing back Philodendron atababuense. We will need to take the plant out of the pot. The reason why we're taking the plant out of the pot is so that we can properly attach this onto the new moss pole that we're giving it. I'm just examining the roots, and the roots look really good. It's just wrapping around in this circular motion, which is a sign that it might be a little bit root bound. So definitely going to upsize the pot. Other than that, I don't see any root damage. The reason why we're clearing the soil off the plant is so that it has really close contact with the moss pole. You want the plant to be pressed onto the moss pole so that it can grow properly. This is the correct way of doing it. I'm taking a piece of gardening tape and just tying the plant onto the moss pole like this. Make sure the aerial roots are touching the moss. Generally, you want to use the tape on every node. So here I did it once on the top and then once on the bottom. And this aerial root is sticking out this way. I'm gonna try to stick it into the moss pole, see if it works. But this is basically it. Just going to repot the plant back with the moss pole. Place the plant and the moss pole into the pot and just give it a good twist so that the moss pole is secured and has soil on the bottom where we left the hole before. You want to fill it all the way to the top, because once you start watering the plant, it'll start settling into the pot more and you'll be left with more space. So I'm just going to try to pack the top with more soil and give it a nice wiggle to see how secure the moss pole is. And just like a couple shakes. I feel like this plant's gonna love it. I feel like this is gonna start growing just like the Florida Beauty, and hopefully the plant likes its makeover. I'm gonna water this plant and come back to make the bigger moss pole. Okay, now that we did our little warm up and made a small one, now we're gonna make a big one. It's basically the same thing. We're gonna use the same materials, but we're gonna make 2 of them and then join it to be one long one. Kind of like a extendable moss pole, sort of. Cut out 2 pieces of mesh, like what we did before. Okay, so this is half of the moss pole. Now we have 2 pieces of mesh. What I'm going to do is zip tie them together so they become one big piece. And then like before, we're gonna tighten the zip ties and then cut off the ends. Now we have a big piece of mesh. I'm just gonna do a double check to make sure this is actually big enough for the Florida Ghost. And it seems to be a good size, and it's even bigger than the existing one. So this will be a good upgrade for my ghost. We're gonna fill it up with moss right now. Again, you don't wanna pack the moss inside or else the aerial roots will have a hard time attaching themselves on it. We're gonna make a sushi again, but this time it's a big sushi roll. We're gonna leave this part, this end empty, because that's the part that's gonna go in the soil. Just a bit more on this end. You can always add moss later. Just have enough to work with. And we're gonna close the moss pole like what we did before. The light is amazing today. Yay, there we go. Now we have a big one. As you can see, it's a little bit flimsy, especially at this point where we joined the 2 mesh together. So this one definitely needs a bamboo inside. This is also bamboo that I got from Amazon. I think it comes in a pack of 20 or 24, I don't remember. But it's very easy to cut down. I'm just gonna stick it in the end like this. It might be easier to put the bamboo in ahead of time before you zip tie. I don't know, but I did it this way. See, now it's like pushing the moss down, so it might have been better for me to just put the bamboo in first. Yeah, looking back, I should have put the bamboo stick in first. Silly me. Let me do this first. This is easier in my opinion than cutting off the bamboo. I just cut the bamboo, so now it's the right height. And we have our sturdy bamboo. Look, could be used as a weapon. And it will be better used as a moss pole for my philodendron Florida ghost. So that's what we're gonna do now. I have to be gentle with this plant because it's so long. It's interesting. So this plant also has roots that's like wrapping around, but there's no roots in the center. Is the soil too dense? I'm not sure. But yeah, there's not much roots in the center. They're all like outside. Very strange. Other than that, let me just take a closer look at the plant. Looks pretty good, other than the fact that it's a little bit sunburned. I had it on my south-facing window, but other than being a little bit pale, the roots look really good. I'm just gonna attach it onto the moss pole. Again, we want the back of the stem to press firmly against the moss pole like this, using the garden tape that we used before. We can come back and adjust it later, but I just want to get the first one really tightly on, like this. Okay, so now the plant is secured on the moss pole. I'm just going to go back and tighten these middle areas. Yeah, this is good. I have some aerial roots in contact with the moss. I don't know, it doesn't seem stable. I'm scared. This is gonna topple over. If I let go, it's gonna topple over. Oh, it's not. Okay, perfect. Give it a good shake. Is it stable? Sort of. It's still a little bit wobbly. I think it needs some more soil on this side. I'm just gonna give it a good watering to make the soil settle a little bit, and then we'll come back. See ya. These are the two plants that weren't looking that great in the beginning of the video. We spruced it up and gave it a new moss pole. I'm really loving how it looks. I hope that the plants like it as well. I hope you are inspired to make moss poles from this video. There's definitely a lot of different ways of making it. I've made one and put leca in it, and I put like a little self dripper just to see like if the plants will like that. You can also try using orchid bark. So there are a lot of different ways you can make moss poles. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to my YouTube channel and my newsletter so you will get exclusive content on how to plant care and style your plants. Thank you so much, and see you guys next time. Bye!